This is Douglas Edwards, bringing you Retrospect, a film excursion into past events, events which form the patterns by which we live today.
Retrospect is brought to you by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization in cooperation with your local Civil Defense Office and your local station. And now here's your host, Douglas Edwards.
There is today a monument to the divine fire and spiritual greatness of Mohandas K. Gandhi, neither of bronze nor marble. It is a living monument. It is India and her 300 million people. His people called him Mahatma, great soul. Early in 1948, during a prayer meeting at Birla House in New Delhi, an assassin stepped into Gandhi's path and fired 3 bullets into his body. Within seconds, the great soul of India was dead. Over 1 million Indians, Muslims as well as Hindus, gathered by the holy waters of the Jamna River in New Delhi as Gandhi's body was borne toward the riverbank for a traditional Hindu cremation ceremony. A glory has departed, said Prime Minister Nehru, and the sun that warmed and brightened our lives is set, and we shiver in the cold and dark. Gandhi had guided India on the long road toward independence. As weapons, he had utilized humility, truth, and nonviolence. These he made more powerful than empires. Though born into the Hindu religion, Gandhi one day came to embrace all religions, to declare himself a Hindu and a Christian and a Jew and a Muslim. The political turning point in Gandhi's life came in 1920, when he openly opposed British restriction of Indian civil liberties. Violence erupted in the Punjab, and British troops massacred almost 400 Indians. In protest, Gandhi traveled throughout India to urge a peaceful boycott of British merchandise, jobs, courts, and schools. Indians came in clamoring multitudes for a view of the Mahatma. In 1930, Gandhi embarked on a program of civil disobedience. In defiance of the British salt tax, and with all of India and the British Lion looking on, he marched to the edge of the sea and made salt from seawater. India followed the Mahatma's lead. People everywhere began to produce and sell salt. In spite of mass arrests, raids, and beatings at the hands of British troops, Indians remained passive through it all. If the goal is good and man is good, said the Mahatma, then the goal can be achieved. Great Britain became convinced they could not govern India against Gandhi. In August of 1931, Gandhi sailed for London as India's representative at the Second Roundtable Conference. If his people looked upon him as a saint who sometimes acted like a politician, the British took quite the opposite view. They were sure he was a politician who sometimes acted like a saint. Winston Churchill referred to him as a half-naked faker. But saint or politician, Gandhi's civil disobedience, climaxed by the Salt March, had proved to be the turning point in India's colonial history. He had made inevitable the day that India would be independent. By 1944, the day of independence was only 3 years away, but a new and potentially dangerous crisis faced Indian leaders. Led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the minority Muslim League had started a movement for partition of India into 2 states. Gandhi held several meetings with Jinnah, but could not dissuade the Muslim leader from his chosen course. On the long-awaited day of independence, Gandhi reluctantly consented to the partition of his beloved India. But partition did not bring an end to the seething hatred between religious groups. For over a year, Calcutta had been the scene of fratricidal murder. Gandhi set out again to preach the doctrine of non-violence. Unable to reach the people with his words, he decided to fast in order to reach the conscience of India. In 73 hours, the warring Muslims and Hindus, afraid their Mahatma might die, agreed to refrain from further violence. Mohandas Gandhi was India's great emancipator, but his teachings have transcended India's borders and spread throughout the world. Truly one of the great spirits of the 20th century. Well, let's turn from the past for a moment and talk about today. The job of building an effective civil defense is a challenge to all Americans. In case of nuclear attack, the threat of radioactive fallout would place the farm areas as well as the cities on the front lines. Another war would place a tremendous responsibility on the nation's farmers. To meet this challenge, they must be prepared. The Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization has a special rural civil defense program designed by the farmer for the farmer to help him prepare for the problems he may face in event of war. Today, we'd like you to meet one farmer who has followed OCDM's recommendations and is an excellent example of a prepared America. Mr. Delbert Benish of Akron, Colorado. Mr. Benish and Larry Kirk of station KFKA in Greeley are taking our cameras for a tour of this prepared farm.
Mr. Benish, when and how did you become interested in civil defense?
While I was in the Navy, I had seen pictures of what amount of damage that a bomb could do, and I wanted to build a fallout shelter for my wife and family and myself.
You went ahead then and built a shelter?
Yes, I built a shelter right off this basement here.
I see. Can you briefly describe the shelter for us?
Yes, it's 9 feet wide, 18 feet long, 7.5 feet high. It has 16 inches of reinforced concrete with 3 foot of dirt, and the side walls are 6 inches thick. I have a 18-foot tunnel running to a 5 by 14-foot well house that has a deep well head, and I have a small room for electric plant. I'll have a 110-volt generator and a 32-volt generator to run the lights.
Now, I presume that in building this, you encountered many problems that folks in town would not incur. For example, power, as you mentioned, and other conditions. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe in the event of a disaster that our power will be cut off here. And I provided a 110-volt generator to run my deep freeze and to run the water, the well, so we could have water. And I have a 32-volt system, which I will use for lights.
And you also have the recommended emergency supply of food and that sort of thing.
Yes, we have that.
That's included in the stockpile.
Yes.
Now then, what about building this? How long did it take you to build it?
It took us just a little over 3 weeks. My wife and my father and I, we did all the work there was. We used our own forms. Everything except the cement and reinforcement rods was taken right off the place here.
In other words, your wife and family helped you to build it?
Yes.
And this shelter has just recently been completed then?
Yes, it's just a recent completed shelter. We don't have it all finished inside yet. We've had harvest and whatnot, and it's taken up our time. I intend to finish it this winter.
And now, are there any future plans or expansion you're going to make on the shelter?
Yes, at the end of the well house there, I intend to build on out.
All right.
There's the end of the tunnel right there. I intend to extend it on out past the brooder house and make a stock shelter there.
And this will be an underground shelter?
Yes, it'll be all underground. It'll be just about the same as a shelter for the family.
Now, in making this shelter, what do you intend to put in the livestock shelter?
I'm going to put 4 head of cattle and 2 horses.
And can you tell us the reason for that selection, that particular number and kind of livestock?
Well, 4 head will be enough to start my herd all over again. Of course, it'll be 3 cows and 1 bull. And the 2 horses will be for audience of farming and to ride around in order to get someplace. I don't believe there'll be much gas around.
You feel there would be a shortage of gasoline. One final question, and that is, do you sleep better at night for knowing that you have this shelter for you, your wife, and 3 children?
Yes, I do. It takes a load off of my mind. It makes me feel a lot easier. There's no... I won't have to worry. I'm ready. If anything does happen, then that's the way I want to be.
Like Mr. Benish, farmers all over the country are taking an active interest in preparing their farms and families for survival. Farm programs of action and information are currently being conducted throughout the country. Through these programs, farmers will be given clear and concise information that will help them protect their homes and strengthen national defense. Many people think of Hollywood as a place where when someone yells, "Lights, camera, action," a throng of actors converge on a set to spend an afternoon making a movie. Admittedly, there are movies which give that impression, but that is a story in itself. For all the milk and honey of its make-believe, Hollywood, indeed all of the entertainment world, is seldom given credit for its tremendous contributions during a national crisis. During the First World War, the three biggest names in pictures, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and Charlie Chaplin, went on a nationwide tour on behalf of the war effort. They sold millions of dollars worth of Liberty bonds and were the first celebrities to barnstorm for the government. The Great White Way responded wholeheartedly when another national emergency arose in 1941. Celebrities from all over the entertainment world contributed to the war effort, each in their own way. Some went into uniform, like Tyrone Power. And Clark Gable. From Broadway to Hollywood, the entertainment world chipped in for the morale-building job during the long war years. For the servicemen on their way to the fighting front, and for those returning, stage door canteens were opened and staffed by a who's who of show business. What red-blooded American boy would pass up a dance with stars, say, like Olivia de Havilland? Another favorite of the boys in uniform, Marlene Dietrich, who put her million-dollar legs to good use. Glamour was the order of the day, with a companion like Deanna Durbin or Linda Darnell. It wasn't hard to forget the war for a few hours. Stars like John Garfield, whose war jobs were destined to be out of uniform, devoted talent and energy to the canteens. Comedians like Robert Benchley and Charlie Butterworth donned aprons and served up a generous portion of laughs. The theatrical trade paper Variety kept tabs on the hundreds of USO units that followed our troops to every front. In every theater of war, Joey Brown performed his incomparable baseball routine with the madcap windup. It proved to be a classic for every GI, including those who loved the game, but those who couldn't play it anymore. Martha Ray took time out to visit camps overseas and give the boys a taste of her own special brand of hilarity. She endeared herself to a million GI hearts by seeming like just one of the boys. Al Jolson, who never gave less than the most, traveled overseas to give the last ounce of his great talent to America's fighting men. These were but a few of the thousands of performers who gave unstintingly of themselves during the war. Their job was to keep up the nation's spirits in troubled times. Every show they did was a show that had to go on. On this program, we spend much of our time looking back. And today we met an American farmer who is very wisely looking ahead. Farmers, like all Americans, are vitally concerned with the problem they might have to face in the nuclear age. Farmers must also be aware of the tremendous part they will have to play in the nation's recovery after a possible attack. On today's program, we've seen the kind of survival preparations being carried out by just one farmer. Not only family survival, but survival of vital livestock and produce. Farmers all over America are making preparations like these. For information, contact your local civil defense office or your local county extension agent. That's it for now. Be with us when we look again at people, places, and events in retrospect. This is Douglas Edwards saying goodbye for now.
Retrospect, starring Douglas Edwards, was brought to you by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization in cooperation with your local Civil Defense Office and your local station. Survival in the nuclear age is a personal responsibility, touching every American family. Make sure you take part. Learn the facts about civil defense preparedness. Start your home preparedness program today. The prepared family builds a prepared nation. Civil defense is an American tradition.